So I just got off a panel on AI, responsible use of artificial intelligence. And the question that the moderator asked the panel was, are we going to need a universal standard of law around AI? Are we going to legislate a universal standard? Or is it better to have different regional legislative principles around artificial intelligence? And so most of the people on the panel were like, yeah, you know what? We need a universal law, and then it's going to have some regional taste profiles. And the guy comes on and he's like, yeah, you know what? I have to disagree with my colleagues. I think that this notion of universalism is absurd, and that this is really baked into American ideals and American colonialist ideas. And so when colonizers were showing up, they had this notion that things could be universalized, that there could be one entire standard created for or method for doing. And I'm like, man, good for him for being able to say that, because universalism is baked deeply into Western cultural ideas, especially through philosophy, religion, law, and political thought. And so Western societies, more often than not, assume that certain values, principles, and truths apply to everyone, everywhere, regardless of their cultural, historical context. So he called it a Western liberal, hegemonic way of existing. And I'm like, ooh, he tightened it up in here. So what does this really mean? What does this really mean when we talk about universalism as it shows up in Western culture, and how we, as the US, are going to want to define the laws of artificial intelligence for everyone else? And so there was this Enlightenment rationalism that happened. You had thinkers like Immanuel Kant and Locke. They pushed the idea that reason leads to universal moral laws. And so you had this universal human rights and democracy and equality all come from this. And so you could make an argument that this could be good, depending on the lens that you look from it. But there's an assumption here that rationality is a shared human trait that can be created through human principles. And this is really spawns itself from a lot of the philosophy of Aristotle, right? And there's also Christianity that plays in this, when you had Thomas Aquinas, and you had the deeply Christianity is deeply universal in absolutism, especially in terms of its moral code, right? And so it promotes a single truth, a single God, a universal idea, and a standard of how we should exist as people. And so this has absolutely shaped the Western legal and ethical systems under assumption of like this morality is objective, and it applies to all people. And so I was really, really surprised that this came up on the call. And I think if you guys look up just colonialism and its civilizing, right? Being able to come into a land and say that, man, you guys don't know God, you guys don't know democracy, you don't know law. We need to civilize the savages. And so this is really how Western powers would justify imperialism and claiming that they were spreading universal progress, reason, and civilization, right? We've seen this. And so non-Western cultures are going to be told they're behind. And I don't think America really respects any other, even if you're a national power. I think America takes a position that we have like exceptionalism and jingoism, and we know the way to do it. And so we we have this global democracy under America, especially when we're talking about free markets, and human rights are framed as like this universal law, which I think that we should be thinking about artificial intelligence as non-autonomous weapons, or like national weapons of mass destruction. They shouldn't be this, but the institutions like the UN or the IMF or the WTO work under this assumption of universal practicality, which is why it makes it difficult to work with China and Saudi Arabia and some of these other countries that have very polarizing principles that exist in their society. And so I just thought that this was such a great statement. And I'm like, man, I love being on panels where there's very smart panelists, right? Where people aren't just regurgitating things that that Chat GPT say. So I just was really, it was by the Gatherverse, and I really appreciate that perspective. And I think that, you guys should really look at it, because the US, there is a cultural relativism that the US takes. And so we're going to see that because we're going to see that in how we talk about legislating artificial intelligence and the U.S. wanting to come into the room as the big dog, right? And so this creates, blind spots of inclusion, as we know, because even so-called universal principles like human rights are shaped by Western history and Western thought, and Western history. And at one point, Western science said that the enslavement of people as chattel, as cattle slave was appropriate. And so I just think that, man, that just really spawned a lot of thoughts in my mind. And so I'm just sharing with my digital family here to give you guys something to reflect on. And so let me know what you guys think are thinking about this. All right, peace.